going to be an awesome video. A7R5. This is going to be an interesting video. I'm probably going to have to spread this out over 3 or 4 videos, but some interesting specs you guys need to know about because this will be a controversial one. Let's get into the video. Got the A7R5, but well, this isn't the A7R5, this is the Sony FX6. I had the A7R5 and I put it with the Catta zoom lens. This is the DZO Catta zoom 35 to 80 zoom lens T2.9. It's a cinema zoom, and I pretty much shot a full gym video with my friends. Christina, she's an athlete, she pretty much does everything you'll hear in the video, but this is a real world test. You can see exactly how this thing performs. I did put a mist filter in front, so that's why it probably looks a little bit misty as well, but you can exactly see how it performs in the real world. Now, the second camera angle is with my A7 IV and the 85mm lens as well, so if you do see that tighter angle on the interview, that is the A7 IV. That's not the A7R5, that's not the Catta zoom lens, it's the other interview angle and all the footage that was shot with this. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll talk about the lens and talk about the camera afterwards.
I'm Christina. I'm just a person that loves to train, really. Always have, always been involved in sports, and I just try to do all the things that I know I should do to live a better life for now and for future. At the moment, predominantly strength training in the gym, which sort of flips between, you know, sort of aesthetic style training and then mostly performance based if I can. Calisthenics, which I can do in and outside the gym, and then I'm doing futsal as well. So I do pole fitness from my studio at home. Then when I'm in the mood, my friends have roped me into a couple of CrossFit competitions before. Yeah, if there's something to do, I'm the friend that my friends ask first. If there's some kind of social sport or something to get involved in, I'm there. So. I've been diagnosed with adenomyosis, which is in the muscular wall. If you're not familiar with endometriosis, essentially you have additional uterine tissue that grows wherever it wants to, which is not a fun time, causes a lot of pain, and it can cause a lot of troubles with exercise and things like that. I'm pretty fortunate. I worked out from a relatively young age that one of the best things you can do is diet and exercise. So that's also a huge reason as to why I train. I do find if I'm maintaining a steady weight and exercising regularly that the pain and symptoms of that tend to stay somewhat at bay. So that's good motivation to train. My main philosophy with training is to always ensure I'm enjoying it, or at least feeling like I'm furthering myself, further developing myself in my training, and that it's further improving my health. So when it comes to things that I've sort of dabbled in or thought about, like even potentially bodybuilding competitions or, you know, furthering aesthetic goals and things like that, I've always sort of dipped my toes in and then swayed back on track and realized, no, that's not necessarily the path I want to go down. My main focus is sort of optimizing my health and trying to increase my energy and zest throughout the rest of my life so that I can continue developing in those areas. I don't want my fitness regime to inhibit other areas of my life. I want it to better it, essentially. I myself for a long time struggled with a lot of like perfectionist traits, I suppose, which I could acknowledge but still couldn't quite get past. And it's not to say I've minimized those entirely, but you know, even with anything, getting into the gym, I manage gyms. I speak to a lot of people every day who feel like they have to get fit before they can come into the gym, or you know, people that feel like they need to look a certain way or even dress a certain way before they can get in here, and it's just not the case. If you get started, those small actions will lead to further motivation, which will continue to perpetuate the rest of the motivation. So you've just got to keep rolling with it. But if you never start, you'll literally never start. I should have thought this through. Cut!
So, what did you think? I absolutely loved this project. Christina is a cool chick. She is a credible athlete, and great to interview as well. And as you saw with that wide angle, I had the DZO Catta zoom lens at 35mm, and I had the A7R with the 85mm f1.8 lens on there, but I did stop it down to f2.8, I think, so I could get a very similar light transmission and have very similar settings. But overall, I loved the performance of the DZO Catta zoom lens. One of the greatest things is I love the versatility of the zoom range, because I'm used to using out of the cinema lenses that obviously are single focal length. So if you've got a wide 24mm or 35mm, then you need that portrait, 75 or 85mm focal length. You've got the 35 to 80 in this thing, and obviously it's a T2.9, so it's a constant aperture, which is really good. So if you do end up obviously wanting to try and match it with other lenses, you can, because it's a T-stop, and that's obviously what cinema lenses are great for. Now, one of the great things is that parfocal length. I did zoom in and zoom out a few times, and just knowing that my focus is going to be on that same point is really good. Obviously with stills lenses, they're not generally parfocal, and if you have it in manual mode and you zoom in and zoom out, your focus will most likely be off. Depends. Some of the new Sony lenses are really great because they are almost parfocal with that whole new focusing system, but this is probably one of the best cinema lenses I've used so far. But anyway, let's get into some of the image quality tests and just show you what this lens is all about, some of the imperfections, but I feel like this adds to the quality, and it's perfectly imperfect. Okay, so we're at 80mm with a T2.9, and you can see straight from the start we've got a bit of pin cushioning when it comes to the distortion, and it's relatively soft in the center and soft on the outsides. We'll go to 50mm at T2.9, a little bit better in the center. And in the corners, it's relatively decent sharpness, not really any distortion there. And we go to 35mm, and you can see there's a bit of barrel distortion here, but it is tack sharp into the center and relatively sharp in the corners as well. We will go to 50mm, and you can see it is it's not too bad in the center. There's a little bit of pin cushioning again, and it's a little bit sharp in the corners, not as sharp as the 35mm. We go to 50mm, and relatively sharp in the center, and it's relatively sharp in the corners, no distortion there. And we go to 35mm, a little bit of barrel distortion again, but tack sharp in the center and pretty sharp in the corners as well. And we stop it down to T5.6, which is generally the sharpest for most lenses. Still that same distortion. Going into the center, yeah, it's not too bad. It's still a little bit soft. 50mm, nice and sharp. And 35mm staying pretty consistent. It's crazy sharp at 35mm at f5.6. And the minimum aperture of T22. And yeah, it's actually really sharp in the center and not too bad in the corners. Still that distortion. Going to 50mm, nice and sharp. Center and corners, and 35mm. Same again, nice and sharp at the minimum aperture of T22. Now, as you can see, it is not crazy tack sharp, and DZOFILM has already come out and said that this isn't designed to be completely tack sharp. It has character. A lot of cinematographers, this is what they actually go for. A lot of DPs, a lot of directors, cinematographers, whoever is in charge of the overall image, this is the look that they're going for. If you need a completely tack sharp image, this lens isn't for you. Buy a different lens, buy a stills lens that is meant to be tack sharp. This lens is meant to show character, and it's meant to help you in that filmmaking journey, just to create something that looks a little bit different. And actually a lot of cinematographers these days are chasing that character. They're rehousing old lenses and essentially using them with the brand new RELXs. So if you are after something a little bit different, the DZOFILM Catta zoom lens is actually quite good for you. Now, we do have to talk about the A7R 5 stability. Now, I did run into an issue, and this is one thing that you need to take into account for if you are using manual lenses. Go into your Sony menu system and put in the millimeters of the lens that you're using. And if you do change the lens, make sure you change that Ibis as well, because essentially what happens is if you put 35mm in there, you need to go into the settings and tell the Ibis that you're using a 35mm lens. And unfortunately, because I've got a zoom lens, I just quickly zoom and I forgot to change that setting. So I was getting some really warpiness in the background and it was not pretty. It's pretty much an unusable shot. I think I set it to 80 millimeters at the full focal length. And then when I zoomed out to 35 millimeters, that's where it was trying to overcompensate and just get some absolute crazy Canon warpiness going on. It wasn't pretty at all. That's got nothing to do with the Catta zoom lens. That's to do with the Sony Ibis and my user error in not telling it that I've changed my lens. So definitely recommend, if you do have manual lenses, go into Ibis settings and adjust for that, because I think I had active steady shot on as well, and I was like, hey, there's 8 stops of Ibis, and if I put active steady shot on, this is gonna be great. And it just overcompensated because I had the wrong focal length on there. Whoops, my bad. But I did test it up against the A7R with the 24-105 on a pretty much a rig side by side, and the A7R5 I guess performed better than the A7R. It did seem like not completely game changing, but it did seem a little bit better. So other notable features on the DZO Catta zoom lens is that rear coin filter as well. So I don't know if they actually sell some of these, but you can obviously put some mist filters in there or whatever kind of creative stylistic filters in there at the rear of this. So you don't actually have anything on the front end, which is, you know, suits some people as well if they don't have a matte box system that actually fits here. But this has a 77 millimeter front filter thread, so it's not crazy large like some other cinema lenses. So you should be able to fit up some smaller matte boxes on there. Now, one of the biggest things that I actually like is obviously the lens collar here that is pretty much consistently on here the whole time. You can take this off, but I do suggest, it is a bit of a heavy lens, so definitely put a lens cover onto this so you're going to be supporting that Sony E-mount. Now, in terms of that Sony E-mount, it does have weather sealing. So weather sealing is obviously really good for the rear, so it doesn't seep, any moisture doesn't seep into your sensor. And it's just overall, it's a great lens. I absolutely love this. And one of the biggest reasons why I like this lens is that it's a cinema lens, it's parfocal, and obviously it's a zoom lens as well. So if you do want those cinema zooms, this one is probably going to be a really good option for you, especially if you want to do some nice creative narrative work. If you want to do some commercials, you still definitely can. It doesn't have to be absolutely tack sharp. It really comes down to your sensor's resolution as well, to if you're going to get some really nice tack sharp images. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did, give it a thumbs up. That would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you'll be seeing plenty more of this lens in my channel because I'll be using it for many moons later. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.